Hey everyone, happy Monday to you. Also, happy Veterans Day, and to our vets out there, thank you for your service. We've got a great show today. You know, in my best HAL 9000 voice, will AI agents evolve? You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. It's Alan Schimmel here at Techstrong, and happy Monday to you. Happy Veterans Day to you. You know, it used to be everyone was off for Veterans Day. At least I remember it that way. Schools were closed, banks were closed, offices were closed. What a great day to play stickball in the street. Actually, by this time of year, we might have been playing a little two-hand touch in the street. We played something in the street, though. I don't know how many of your kids are out playing in the street. But we're here at Techstrong Gang today, though, and like most of you, we're working. But nevertheless, veterans deserve a day, and so happy Veterans Day to them. Got a great bunch of stuff to go over on the gang today, but first let me introduce you to our gang. We've got some real core gang members, and one of my favorite people still sporting his Yankee. We attract Yankee fans to this show for whatever reason. But let me introduce you. First of all, joining us in Colorado in his red, the man in red from the Guitar Factory. It's our CTO and future VP, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Happy Monday. Happy Veterans Day.
Okay. Is there any significance to the red?
It's just a red day. That's all. I just wanted to wear red.
All right, you're entitled.
That's good. I'll wear that today.
All right. Happy Reds. Joining us from New Mexico, one of our favorite states, and one of our favorite people. She's the CEO of Deploy Hub, Tracy Ragan. Hey, Tracy, how are you?
I'm great. I got in the last weekend or a couple of days, we've had almost 2 feet of snow. So I'm a bit snowed in today. It's kind of weird.
That is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Boy, I thought it was always warm by you.
No, we're Santa Fe's up in the we're higher than Denver actually. We're
Really?
at almost 8,000 feet. Yeah.
We're not. You may be at a higher elevation, but you don't get higher than Denver.
Yeah, the altitude is a lot too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Hey, we'd be smoking here in Florida, but no. Well, no. I promise we're not going to discuss elections anymore. Let me go next over to Alabama. He's probably the biggest Yankee fan in Alabama.
Could be. My son Daniel, maybe he's got.
But he's not long for Alabama.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, Botcher Galoop.
Hey guys. Hey everybody.
John Willis. Hey John, good to have you. I haven't been on with you on the gang at me and you at the same time.
Yeah, I missed the big guy. I've been coming.
Yeah, I know. I always get upset.
Be there. Why should I come? You know.
I get it. I get it. But I'm glad to see your smiling face. And then finally, I don't know if he's the biggest Yankee fan in Harrison, New York, because there's a lot of Steinbrenner's may live there for all I know.
There's a lot of Yankee fans here. It's a safe place for Yankee fans.
Yeah. Well, no politics, Mike. Remember, you told me. But anyway, he's our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. All right. So, guys, on this fine Veterans Day, we're going to start off with how will software engineering evolve in the age of AI agents, agentic AI? Mike, why don't you set the table here for us, and we'll bring our cleanup hitter in, keeping with that baseball theme.
There you go. So IBM Research has been showing off some agents that they built, and they're not alone. Seems like just about everybody's playing around with AI agents these days, and they're going to change the way we think about software engineering. But Mitch, I know you've been tracking this space, and it seems to me, at least, we've gone from, everybody wants to be a prompt engineer to maybe I don't need to be a prompt engineer because I just need to orchestrate a bunch of agents. But how do you think this is all going to play out?
Well, it's such a fascinating time to be part of software. John Willis is doing some great work with incorporating AI into your development and your applications. This is about applying AI to our code. And we're starting to see companies issue some early agents, maybe releasing a few here and there, that are examining code bases and fixing specific problems or recommending fixes. Now, keep in mind, there are academic projects that work on really large code bases, like that, just taking 12 repositories at a GitHub to be able to process those and see how much they could kind of tackle it. There's a site called SWE-bench.com. It's actually from a paper that was written by some folks in there that were partially affiliated with Carnegie Mellon. And their whole idea is, let's do research by taking these 12 repositories. They've built their own code on top of LLMs that they're using and turning it loose to see what kind of problems they can solve. Here we have, IBM using Watson with their own LLM targeted at seeing what kind of problems that they can fix. And the announcement, I don't believe, went into specifics about which kinds of bugs are they going after. I think, my opinion is, we will see kind of narrow-focused agents that I'm really good at fixing, memory protection issues. I'm really good at fixing buffer overflow issues or whatever it might be. The challenge is that when you get into you really get into code, not just generating code with an LLM today, is software is very interrelated, right? There's libraries, there's code you write, there's calls going between lots of different elements of code. There's the environment that it's operating in and using some of those services from your application. So to get to the point where we're really fixing some of the real vexing ones is a little bit off. I think a little bit farther down the road, but we will get there. I think 2025 will be the year of the code fixing agents for in AI and DevOps, if not more other things too.
John, Tracy, Mark?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, no, I've been tracking this space pretty hard because, I think this whole thing got exposed. They call it SWE-bench, the SWE-bench paper, and the paper that you wrote. It was actually just, I think one of the guys was CMU, but mostly Princeton guys, and now they've done a bunch of startups. But there was we don't have to go too far in it, but Devin back in early this year, like March, so that the whole SWE-bench it's mostly Python code, It's a lot of problems from existing bugs. And the SWE-bench people wrote a paper and said, could we use sort of some type of agentic processing to solve, well-known bugs that already had this sort of issue, the fix, and then they went back and got the original code, and then you benchmark against it. And the original SWE agent from the Princeton students or researchers was basically like somewhere about 9%, 8% accuracy. And then this Devin came out, which was really sort of a marketing ploy. It was a bunch of competition coders. They actually got, funded by what's his face, Peter Thiel, right? And they got like $20 million, just kids that win competition coders, and they made up a bunch of shit.
But Peter Thiel's behind it. What do you expect?
Yeah. We said we don't want to throw code, but they showed up with 13%. It woke everybody up. Within a week, there were a bunch of people that were saying, "I'm doing this too." And then this Open Devin came out, and then over the time, there's been a bunch of solutions. Ada, and I don't know if people have heard of Cursor. It's all the rage right now. So this thing is pretty heated. As open source, as proprietary. The place I'm more interested in is what the big people are doing, right? So I saw the IBM thing that you guys had posted, and that was pretty cool. I've been putting IBM, unfortunately, on the back burner, to see if they really flesh out to be competitive with sort of Amazon, Microsoft, OpenAI, all those guys, right? So, so my focus has been looking like, I got early in on Microsoft Copilot Workspace. So you got Copilot, which everybody knows. They created a workspace, I don't know, probably about 5-6 months ago. And I got early access to it. And it's sort of interesting. I've gone in and I've tried to get, it's very buggy, a lot of memory issues. Like you said, Mitch, there's, these things are still very toyish, but they do pretty phenomenal things. Like the workspace, you literally grab an issue in GitHub, and analyzes the whole repo. It then comes up with explaining what the code actually does. Then it gives you, say, if you want to go next, it actually generates a code to change it. And then you can sort of you change it, update it, gives you ability to edit that. And then if you want to go forward, it generates a pull request, right? And it's pretty crazy for basic things, and then the Amazon has Amazon Q developer. I've been trying to see what Google's doing with their Vertex. But the interesting thing is, I think they're all going down the wrong path, in my opinion, because it's a hammer nail problem. Is all these benchmarks and everybody's, and I looked into the actual what IBM was doing. They're on the SWE-bench. There's a SWE-bench benchmark, and they're sort of listed. And so all the big guys are doing about 25, 26% efficiency in percent resolved. But the problem that is this hammer nail problem is, this is the real solution here for me. It's the enterprise, which is Java code, which is banking code, which is retail code. And guess where none of that code is? It's not on GitHub. And so there's a couple of us, guys from Cortex and a couple of sort of core Java people. We're trying to see if we can't take the SWE-bench model and use, get some organizations to see how this sort of agentic process works when a lot of the coding structures are not well known. Like, because the Copilot knows Python really well based on what's on GitHub in Python code. The argument is it might not know, what JP Morgan or Capital One, who had 20,000 Java developers at one point, that code base is not available to Copilot, right? So there's an interesting, I think this whole thing is absolutely fascinating. I think it's real. It's baby steps. I think the Copilot workspace is, in my opinion, the most usable tool, even though it's still in beta, but it is crazy buggy. I mean, crazy buggy, but it does solve some wicked problems. So
Mike, you said something sent a chill through my heart.
Yikes. My heart.
So we wasted our time learning how to do prompts, and it's just as agents is the way to go. I'm not going to be prompting. I'll just tell my agent to go do something.
This is the debate that's people are starting to ask the question. I don't know the answer for sure, but it seems like, as we keep going down this path towards agents, the agents are just going to be told what to do in plain English. And I don't need to know more than that.
I absolutely think that's where we're headed. We're headed to natural language being the primary UI for instructing these things, right? That's what John's talking about, right? Is you're giving it something, telling it, go look at this, right? And now you can, if you're a user of Grammarly, it has, AI built into it, but it comes up, you don't prompt anything. It comes up and says, would you like some recommendations? And it picks out sections of something you've written, and you can choose to adapt those things or not. So as AI gets embedded, whether it's agents or in the UI, now we know it's AI, but I think writing the prompts, we're not very far from the point where you just say natural language, what I want, and they go write me the prompt.
Here's a point I want to get in. This is something I realized. I was showing a development team, these guys have a startup. It's the ex-rancher guys, right? And I was showing them this workspace, and they're like, okay, that's cool. Let's try this issue. And it failed miserably, right? And then I said, well, wait a minute. And I looked at the issue description, and the issue description was not well formed. So like this, that you're actually right. The language that we use, you look at that IBM paper and they're going through, if the issues are not, I had a conversation at Gene's conference with the guy one of the program managers of GitHub Next. I'm like, what we really need is these tools to create well-formed issues descriptions. So then when the tool goes in and tries to understand what that is in the repo, and so it's always going to be, whether it's agentic or it's sort of general, just prompt, it is going to your point, Mitch, it's natural language. And so we need to make sure that we've got to get better and crystal clear about our questions, our intent, and our goals.
Well, let me just make a note here, cancel the prompt engineering training, but
okay. Corporate training.
Yeah.
And there's another topic that we have that we're not kind of diving into here, and that is the culture of these tools. I've worked with developers for a very long time, and they really do see what they do as a craft. I believe that the pull request is the way to go, to say it's basically suggesting what they need to do. But really and truly, it needs to be more like Grammarly. It just needs to be, if we're going to make it really work, it has to be fed directly to them. They have to know it as soon as they're coding. It's got to be done right in their face. Now, for maintaining mature software, let's just call it that, legacy software, that may be helpful, right? So somebody doesn't have to look at that code, because I've been on projects where you're having to maintain legacy software and it's not very fun. And if we can make that more efficient, that would be important. But for developing new code and new applications, I think we have a way to go before the technology's there that we can trust it. We always talk about trust, and before developers are willing to adopt it and give away their creativity skills. I had one developer tell me once about build scripts. He was like, well, I like making my own shoes. And my response was, well, isn't it true that the shoe cobbler's children never has shoes? Maybe you have to be a little more efficient in your work. And some of these tools are about efficiency, but developers are not always about efficiency. So we have to see how developers work. And I think serving it to them is a more direct method than to create the pull request, even though I think that's a good way too. But I think they'll be ignored.
Yeah, really good, important point. I want to also raise, you remember James Wickett that we've talked to before? He's now at
He's doing good stuff with this.
Yeah, dry run security, and they're doing some really interesting things. Have some product in market now, but analyzing code. I mean, the whole repository, looking for where might there be security exposures or security compliance. Somebody started using a different library than we normally use for the shopping cart. Did we know that was happening, and is that in compliance with what we're looking for? Or here's a code that allows command injection or SQL injection kind of thing. So people are doing, it's John and I probably could go have dinner, and but about noon the next day we'd stop talking because we just couldn't talk anymore. There's so much going on in this space.
Absolutely. And that's why we talk about it. And that's why people come to Techstrong Gang, to hear about stuff like that. But someone's got to pay the bills. We need to run a little commercial here. We'll take a break. And we're going to come back and talk about, are these AI models any more or less secure? We used to have this conversation, open source, closed source. Open source was more secure, less secure. Now the same question for AI models. We'll talk about that and more. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
We're back, and as Alan said, we're going to talk a little bit about, just how secure are these AI models that we're about to inject into all our software, because there's a conversation out there that says that they are subject to the same kind of vulnerabilities that all other software is, and there's a list now from the folks who do OWASP. And it's not clear to me, though, that these are more serious vulnerabilities than the ones we know already, or if they're just basically the same ones dressed up for an AI model, and an AI model is just another type of software artifact. But John, I know you were looking into this. What's going on here?
Yeah, the answer is both, Mike. I mean, that's the scary part, right? I do this presentation, Dear CIO. I've been doing it, and really my sort of passion now is this shadow AI, this technical debt tsunami that's coming down the pike. And the fear that, and I know I've said this before on the show, that CEOs are hiring chief AI officers. Chief AI officers are hiring kids from Stanford and CMU, and they tell me things, and I've had these conversations where, what's so hard about installing Kubernetes? I did it in 15 minutes. Like, yeah, do you ever hear the plumber joke, where they hit the hammer? I mean, they just don't know what they don't know. And CIOs are being told, and I get confirmation of this over and over, the chief AI officers are told to stay away from the CIO and CISO, because this do or die, go fast. And and what we're building is scaffolding of infrastructure. And so the answer is both, right? You have all those vulnerabilities now. AI, the problem in a couple of years from now, maybe in a year from now, we won't even call it AI. We're just going to call it services. We're building stacks on Kubernetes and Kafka and Redis and all this stuff. And 85, and this is just my napkin math, 85 to 90% of those AI solutions, those chatbots, are just plain old cloud native infrastructure. And if the people who normally protect the fort are not getting involved in building that infrastructure, that's ground zero for problems. But then the scarier part is the people who protect don't know how to protect in this new world, right? And so this is where I get into what, I think, I haven't done my sort of exhaustive check lately, but NIST has done a terrible job so far, in my opinion, of trying to protect us in AI. I mean, when you read, in my opinion, you read the NIST discussions, you replace Gen AI or an LLM with Google search. And it's like the same thing, right? Like all the scary things that you could get from but OWASP, which is the sort of the article I pointed out, like OWASP, I think what OWASP is doing right now is I think they're doing the best job. Now, our good friend Tracy, I think MITRE's doing incredible research. So, they definitely have a gold star. But OWASP is, to me, when I, was getting involved in this stuff in the 80s, like ITIL was not great, but it was the only game in town, right? It at least gave you a way to figure out how to manage all this chaos that was happening in the, mid to late 80s, early 90s. And I think, to me, I was thinking about OWASP. I mean, they're just doing a really good job of rolling up their sleeves. An OWASP LLM top 10 LLM is, is a great starting point. And then this paper that, this sort of update to the LLM top 10 is they've got a COE guidance paper. And I like glass half full, glass half empty. Glass half full is they're laying out like what teams should be involved, what is the roles and responsibility, what is explainability in AI, prompt injections. There's these jailbreaks are like really scary. I can get into that, where people are poisoning public documents, knowing that a corporation that talked about their new GPT is using that public document, and they're putting bytecode or jailbreak, bytecode exception in the text that they know will show up in a RAG. And that'll get put into the context window.
Yikes.
I mean, like it like, so there's like, dear CIO, like, you can't fall asleep on this one. You got to be the hero. So anyway, but my sort of meta pointed out is that paper is, I think OWASP is doing the best job. The only thing I think all of them sort of over-rotate on the fundamentals of security, which have to be done. Necessary, but not sufficient. We need to teach the protectors how to talk this new language. Like, I'll give you one last example, which is, in both of the papers, which just came out like last month, they don't talk about observability, and observability in AI is a completely different animal. It's about evaluations. It's about hallucination management. It's about correctness. It's bias. There's no mention that I can see of any of that. And that's about as important a subject that I want a CIO to know right now, is how important it is to have that tool as a tier 1 portion of your arsenal. So yeah, that's sort of my take on it. It's worth reading the updated papers from OWASP, and so.
Look, I applaud OWASP for recognizing this as a security issue and shining it in the light of day. My question is, 5 years from now, is that OWASP top 10 list going to be the same? Because they don't tend, one of the knocks on OWASP, quite frankly, is, they were the ones who kind of put AppSec on map, right? But their top 20 AppSec list hasn't changed very much in 17 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, the thing is that like in this, we know this is an accelerated timeline. I mean, the OWASP top 10, 12 is already. It's sort of like it is like I'm not a security person by trade, right? So when I started doing DevSecOps, I navigated quickly the OWASP, right? And then I thought, oh, okay, now what is that? An SQL. I mean, I knew what an SQL injection was, but some of that stuff is still good for people to understand how attackers attack, right? And so I think you're right. The OWASP top 10, which came out like last year, or earlier this year, right? It's already sort of like mutated, like that example I just gave. Like that's not it. That's something that just showed up in the last month or so. But I think it's a good foundation. It's a good place for people to start. So, like, is the OWASP original top 10 good or bad in the grand scheme of things?
I think it's good.
I don't think the fact that the list doesn't change is an indictment of OWASP. I think it's an indictment of the development community because we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. But is what it is.
Well, here's what I like about the OWASP top 10 for LLMs. It's very approachable. You don't have to be a John Willis into the depths of all the things that are happening behind the scenes. It's things like prompt injection, insecure handling of prompts and output handling. It's data poisoning. It's denial service. It's, there are things that people are going to recognize, kind of bigger macro issues. And yes, there's a lot of detailed things behind it that maybe it doesn't cover yet. I don't think we'll see more evolution of kind of getting into the bits and bytes of how we protect this. But right now, to your point, John, about, what do you want on the CIO's list? I would take the OWASP top 10 and sit down and say, these are all the things we need to start working on.
Absolutely.
It's not the turn the knob. It's the, get the train rolling.
Let's get started. Yeah. Pay attention, right?
And maybe we should start with the NIST software development framework, because right now most companies haven't even, achieved levels of security in traditional development, just what we're delivering today, much less all the problems that we'll experience with our LLMs. And this, everybody knows by now I'm not a fan of agents. And the reason why I'm not a fan of agents is because it complicates the process from a security standpoint drastically when it comes to managing the thousands of agents that we will be seeing. It is a Death Star that is going to be almost impossible to manage with the tooling that we currently have. And I get frustrated because
I feel a huge hole in the force.
Yeah,
as if a thousand agents
suddenly
stop. Thousands of agents suddenly stop.
It is a very complex dependency graph. It's extremely complex. And the stack that we're building is massive. And I look at it every day and go, why?
Yeah. This is the catch-22 here, though. You're so right and spot on. Like I talked to somebody who's really big for one of the big four or big five, and he was bragging about how they've built tens of thousands of bots. And I was like, the first thing I think about was RPA and what a disaster that was, right? Like the screen scraping across the whole enterprise, right? So there's something in the middle here about agents, and I haven't quite figured out, but you're dead right. If an organization thinks they're just going to write 10,000, or they're going to bring in some big four, big five consulting organization to create, 10,000 bots to just automate everything, it's going to be a dependency.
And just trying to manage the drift on those.
No
That will be a challenge that people will be struggling with. And, and from a security standpoint, you don't have to hit all of those bots or all those agents. You only have to hit a few.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? And so how do you know those few have been hit? So the more agents we put out there, the more difficult securing and managing, and the platform engineers are, their time is going to be spent doing a lot of very gory detail work.
Well, the problem is
right now we just don't have tools.
Agents it's like chatbots. Agents are easy to produce. And that's why we're going to see a plethora of agents being created. The real game changer is what you were talking about, Tracy, is when you really ingrain AI usefulness in the workflow of people doing the work, the Grammarly example, right? And what is it doing behind the scenes? We're using agents to kind of do analysis on things and do some basic workflow kind of steps for us that can benefit from things like context graphs and that inform the agent a little bit more about how to actually understand the data that it's, understand, relatively speaking, the information that it's, that it's analyzing. So I think we're going to be smacking a lot of those agents for a long time. They're going to be around for a while. Not that that's what we want to have, but I think
we need something that feels like an orchestration framework for all these agents, but then the agents are going to conflict with each other, and how are we going to sort that? And that seems, to Tracy's point, a lot of complex software, and I'm looking forward to continuing coverage of this subject all the way through 2027, maybe 2028.
Yeah. Once the agents are out there, we're not bringing them home.
Yeah, exactly. There'll be swarms of them that
do you
attack our
guys know, are there any agent orchestrator projects out there right now?
I haven't heard any.
Well, this is why I think that that's why I want to focus more, even though like things like Cursor and Ada and OpenDevin are very fascinating for like sort of a hacker mentality. I think the promise has got to be with Microsoft, Google, and so that's why I've been really tracking, Microsoft Copilot Workspace, what Google's doing with Vertex, and because they're going to have a grip, because thing is they use these tools to manage their own software bases, right? So like, and they're pretty good at that stuff, so I think we're going to find really, hopefully I use RPA a lot as like the bad story. Like, everybody, 5-7 years ago, every CIO wouldn't talk to you about anything other than RPA, right? And RPA turned out to be a disaster, except it solved those real naring problems, right? So like, I had a guy one time, and I was dragging on RPA, and he comes up to me at the session and says, John, during the COVID SBA loan thing, we had 1 week and we didn't have APIs. We had a PDF document, and we had to have that thing done in a week, or else we weren't going to get, our customers were going to go to B of A, right? And RPA saved our lives. So I think the way we have to think about it is the way we always try to somehow fight our way through this battle is be intelligent at how we use these things.
Mm-hmm. And Alan, to your point, so IBM has a skunk work project where they're talking about orchestration of agents, and that's one of the things that they showed. Every vendor who has anything to do in this space has a similar project going on. And this is going to be the next big fight in the IT sector. It's going to be control over who's going to dominate on this whole orchestration framework thing, because they all smell it as a huge opportunity.
I agree. It's the next Scoob. All right. Let's take a break. We're going to come back. There's a topic, do we need FinOps for AI? You're watching Techstrong Game.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All right, we're back, and we're talking about FinOps for AI. It turns out that people are starting to figure out that AI is not like butterflies. It's not free. It's rather expensive when you sort it all out, and the cost of the infrastructure in particular seems to be super expensive, and maybe we'll get smarter about how we build these things. But Tracy, I don't know, you're talking to folks out there on the IT side, are they starting to ask questions about how come this stuff costs so much, and what do we do to rein it in?
Well, I think this is an age-old question. How do you rein in cost in software development? We've always had this discussion, and every time we have a new technology, we have this discussion. When relational databases first hit the road, everybody ran with it, and then they started realizing that they have higher cost. And how do you get control of that? And we talk about, chargebacks and not being able to see them. But I believe that companies are starting to now recognize that they have a potential to start reining back some of those costs. The charge forward in AI has been a little crazy. It's like when fools rush in, everybody just starts throwing code and everybody tries to start building these new services, if we're going to call them services, building new agents. And this does have a cost. It's not free. It's expensive. And we understood that Kubernetes had the potential to allow us to have software that could self-heal and could grow when we need it. And that we saw an immediate benefit. I think the problem here is we're not seeing immediate benefits from AI yet. So we're spending a lot of money and we're not getting a return. And while we are doing the best we can to manage these costs, there are still areas that we don't know about. We're struggling, companies are struggling with trying to have a little bit of transparency to understand if the extra cost has improved efficiency. What is the ROI and what we've already delivered? Many of these AI tools are not meeting the demands that people had originally thought, that they were going to create this massive new efficiency around many tasks that we do, but it just hasn't gotten there yet. So we have to go back to, basic management of, one of the articles we talked about, technology business management. I haven't heard TBM in such a long time, but I think right now we need to start talking about it. We need to understand if our enhanced cost has improved our efficiency. We really need to understand the increase in this financial expense and have some transparency in it, because most companies are struggling with it and they don't do a good job of sort of data-driven decision making. Right now, I feel it's very emotional, and we're just getting around to saying this emotion is starting to cost us quite a bit of money. And while we may not know exactly which team is costing us money, we have one big bill, we know we got to do something about it. And scaling back and really understanding why we're developing AI, why we are spending this money, and understanding what benefits we're bringing to our end users and our customers is where we have to be. We have to do that first. I mean, don't just tell me I have a great AI tool that doesn't really make my life better. I have some friends, and we decided that every week we would say, what's your favorite AI tool that you've come up with? I've only come up with 2, Grammarly and this really cool tool that, now I don't remember the name of it, but you can take a picture of your food at a restaurant and it'll give you all of the calories and the protein content of it. That actually makes my life really happy. But what are the tools that are being delivered, and why are we spending so much money? And is AI delivering? I don't think it is yet. And maybe we have to spend a lot more money and have a lot more fools rushing in before it's making money.
I sort of disagree on a couple of points, but respectfully, but I totally agree with the cost reining in. There, people are not putting any sort of methodology. I mean, like I love just looking at history and saying, oh, there we go again, right? Cloud, private cloud, back to some semblance of we did little of both, right? We went all in with cloud, costs got high, then a bunch of organizations tried to pull everything back. They realized they didn't get, all that story, right? We're going through that right now. On a personal level, things like Copilot and coding agents have changed my life. I've coded more in the last year and a half, 2 years than I've coded in my whole 40 years of career. But if, I've been tracking some of these organizations. I'm a consultant for PU and at MongoDB. I do a lot of their work at hackathons. There's real stuff happening, and even at Gene's conference at ETLS, Adidas, you could watch their presentation. They talk about performance gains, and they're real. These aren't just Fernando. I can never pronounce his last name. He's a real deal guy. He's been in the DevOps community forever. He runs digital transformation there at Adidas. When he gets up and talks about the productivity gains that they're getting, they're not like Spotify blog articles. Adobe, Brian Scott over at Adobe, who used to be at Disney, like he talks about what they're doing. Vanguard, they've created an audit GPT tool that they're giving their field auditors that are just, and they're showing, and then, the John Deere, I had some great conversations with John Deere. So there is, I totally agree with you on the, I don't think these organizations they're starting to hit the brick wall on token costs. but they are they have gone into it like the fools rush in. But there are, I mean, these companies are not, they're not, they're pretty bright about their business, and I think they're tracking the ones I've been following. And the only other thing I wanted to add is there are ways to sort of save on costs that you need to sort of understand, which is, things like, we've talked about quantization on this show, just, rechanging the model instead of having, a billion weights and parameters all as 32-bit floats. You can make them 4-byte ints, right? And you get the same performance for most problems. Prompt compression, and then this really interesting thing. I should write an article for you guys on this. It's called LLM to VEC, and it basically it's fascinating. I think what the opportunities of this is basically it's just quickly. When you go into ChatGPT and ask a question, a prompt, it's called a decoder model. It's like, here's my sort of sentence, sort of attention-based mechanism, go find out what the next, this is what they call bidirectional attention. So it can actually do what the training models do when you create the embeddings. So that it has this ability to bidirectional. So you can literally create amazing efficiencies if you start taking things that you would normally do in a prompt with a decoder like a GPT-4. Anyway, I'm getting very technical now, but these are 3 right off the bat that I'm recommending to some of my clients right now. So,
and I don't disagree that in Copilot and ChatGPT I use every day. But what software are we delivering to non-technical people? Let's talk about everybody else, because that's where the big money is, where it's going to impact the lives of everyday individuals who may not be in tech. And I don't see AI delivering a whole lot of benefit in that. And that's what's puzzling to me, because that's where the unicorn is.
No, I mean, you got to look at JP Morgan Chase and what they're doing. Look at, there's one of the largest workforce automation companies. They're literally revamping their product portfolio for workforce automation. I mean, John Deere is doing sort of supply chain logistics, like just changing the game. So there's real stuff happening. We're not seeing it. That's the other thing. A lot of these companies right now, I can't mention the workforce automation company, because they actually not only was under NDA for the client I was working through them, they made me fill out another NDA. They're so secretive. So a lot of these companies are not giving away how they're using this
Come
automation.
on, John, no one's watching. You could tell us.
Just a few friends.
I'd like to know. I would like to start seeing real products come out that make our lives better.
Wait, it's a double secret NDA.
That was a double thinking.
It cancels the other one out, so it's not secret.
The second day at ETLS, the whole morning is Adidas, Adobe, Vanguard, and John Deere later in the day. And it was, I told Gene that I thought it was the 10 deploys a day at Flickr Day. Because these were real companies showing how they're doing like real stuff with this technology, and not this sort of nonsense of just,
John, you said something about, hey, you like watching history. The fact of the matter is, what you're watching here is the creative process at work in normal times. This is how stuff works, especially in technology. But it works like this, I think, through all creative processes. First, you try to get something. You have the belief that this thing could do something. Then you get it to do something. Then you figure out how to do something more efficiently, right? The efficiency piece of it comes in. And unfortunately, somewhere near the caboose of the train or behind, someone says, what about security? And then we say, oh, we got to do it efficiently and secure. Darn, my head blows up.
Yeah.
And but that's normal. That's the normal
we do
process.
It over and over. But why can't we just? But my dear CIO why can't we just, like, at least this time learn a little bit? We've got
because
so
maybe
many
it's human nature. Maybe it's human nature. Maybe it's tied directly into the creative process.
I think the momentum working against us too is, every CIO, every CEO has been told, if you don't have an AI strategy now, you are a dinosaur. You are going to die with the dinosaurs.
It's do or die is what I hear.
And so it's like over rotate, but at 9,000 RPM. We're like way over pushing this.
No, but think about that though.
I'm not saying it isn't the process. I think we're just the amount and the speed is just
Let-
And,
let's-
we're,
wait,
and I
I
don't
gotta-
see we're delivering anything better. I mean, John, I'm glad you're having a different experience, but from where I'm sitting, and I'm not getting a view into John Deere or JP, I don't see it. So I just see a lot of money being spent on AI and not a lot being delivered.
Oh, I think there's absolutely a lot being delivered. Talk to my sales team. I just ripped them about not using AI on our sales things. It's being delivered. It's being delivered in software. It's being delivered in marketing. It's being delivered all over. But just let's think about, I'm going to ask you something. Substitute nuclear fusion for AI, right? Right now, we're just trying to get nuclear fusion to work in a lab. Or an tomahawk or whatever they call those things that they do it in, right? Then once they get a sustained fusion reaction, we're then going to work to make it commercially feasible. In other words, figure out the cost involved, right? Because a sustained fusion reaction gives off more energy than it takes to create. Then we're going to figure out how to make that efficient, so that we could do it at scalable ways, and we could start really powering our world on this stuff. Then we'll figure out how to make it so that no one can come in here and do something catastrophic with it. But it's science. This is science. This is how science works. I
don't think. Well, first I was going to say, are you in the Colorado high or the Santa Fe high? Right.
Look, I got a whole universe on my thumbnail right here, man. Wow.
I don't know.
I seem to remember having that nuclear fusion conversation in 1978, so I don't think it's moving along that very far.
What? In the next 5 years, we're going to have commercial level nuclear fusion.
Well, I
with
do think
quantum
that.
computers.
I do think that speeding up this process and making AI more a more real, an easier software to learn and to develop in and to deliver software to end users, it's going to make our lives better. I think that these managed platform services and cloud infrastructure services that provides everything in one place for us will be helpful. I don't think they will last for the long run, but I think it gets us started. And I don't know if many companies are going to a single platform like a Nebius, but I believe it will be useful for new companies getting into this and cutting costs down.
Fair enough. Tracy, henceforth, your Delta House name is AI Skeptic.
I am such a skeptic. I just want to push and say, if we're going to spend the money, you better be delivering.
Okay.
I thought Mike got all the skeptic titles. It's not fair.
No, from now on, Mike's known as Pinto.
Pinto. Oh, okay.
All right. Hey, we're about out of time. We got to call a wrap on this wonderful Veterans Day Monday version of Techstrong Gang. Tracy, stay safe and dry and, warm out there in Santa Fe. John, it's always great seeing you, my friend. Give big hugs to the boys and Vicky.
Okay.
Mike and Mitch, thanks for joining us. Guys, this week, Mike, Mitch, and I are in Salt Lake City, where we will be covering the KubeCon event. And we'll be doing a couple of Techstrong Gangs live right here in Salt Lake. So I don't know if they'll be live, but we'll be recording some Techstrong Gangs. We'll be broadcasting live Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from KubeCon.
Alan, can I get one
Yes.
quick thing, which
Sure.
is you can call me Delta House, the cynic. Isn't that the conference where 5,000 people try to learn where to put semicolons and commas?
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. It's 15,000 this year.
Replaced by AI,
Oh,
but hey,
There's an agent for that, John.
We're going to hang out at YAML House. Is
There's
that what you're saying?
multiple
YAML
agents.
House.
YAML House.
And if
Louis.
you're in Salt Lake,
Okay. Enough.
there's an
Toga parties.
NHL game. There's a good game in Salt Lake
With the
City.
Utah, what they called Utah Hockey Club.
Hockey Club and the Golden Knights.
There's
We're
also
seeing-
app dev field day happening next week that's going to be broadcast from
And
from
I think
Salt
the
Lake, so.
Utah Jazz might be playing there next week as well. Who would
Mhm.
think that Utah would have a basketball team called the Jazz, right? Salt Lake City, the birthplace of the blues. Anyway, have a great day, everyone. Check us out at KubeCon this week. For now, though, we're out.